one of the first introductory sessions that we're doing obviously virtually. This is the very first event that we're doing virtually. And what we want to do is we want to be able to share the knowledge and expertise that you as regulators and you as business support organisations and local authority colleagues have, and what you do to support businesses, and the benefits of collaboration as well, which is one of the key parts of Better Business for All. So I have two colleagues on the line with me who are going to be giving presentations today. We have Tracy Flynn, who is from Bury, and she is the unit manager for economic development team in Bury. And we have Alex Dockery, who is from York City Council, and he is the economic growth manager of York City Council. So thank you very much for you colleagues for coming along. There's just a few housekeeping rules before we start, and that is just to say that obviously what we're going to do is we are recording this event because there are some people who are unable to attend and who would like to attend and to know more. So that's why we're recording the event. There will be a chat line running as well, so please put your questions on there. If you could put your camera off and put yourself on mute whilst listening to the speakers, just so that we can make sure everybody can hear everything. So I think without don't want to take up too much time, I'd like to introduce our first speaker to this Northwest Better Business for All event, and that is Tracy Flynn, who's the unit manager for economic development for Bury. Over to you, Tracy.
Hello, I'll just wait for the slides to come up and then I'll give you a bit of a background about what we do in Bury. Please do let me know when you can see them. Oh, there we go. There we are. Okay, so thanks very much everybody for taking the time to join us today. I've actually given myself a little bit of a treat and come into the office. So I've put a suit on, which bizarrely still fits me after 6 months. And the reason I've come in the office is the connectivity where I live at home is not brilliant. So I would have had to turn my camera off at some point, I'm sure. So I'm Tracy Flynn. I'm the unit manager for economic development. We sit within the business growth and infrastructure directorate of Bury Council, which is a new directorate. So if you'd like to move to the next slide, please. I'm just going to spend a little bit of time telling you what we do, and then hopefully you'll be able to see the connections that we have with other parts of the council and other parts of our partner organisations as well. So we are a very small team. There's a core team of 4, and we're sat within strategic planning and economic development, which I think is quite unusual. I don't think that happens, to my knowledge, in any of the districts across GM, or I'm not aware of any other places that has that. So we sit with our kind of planners, our planning policy guys, the guys who are leading on the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework. And if I do start to talk about things that mean something to me in Greater Manchester, just put something in the questions, and I'm more than happy to send links out to colleagues from across the UK who don't really know what I'm on about. So in terms of what we do a little bit of everything, and that's what makes it it's such a brilliant job, because no 2 days ever the same. So we take care of employment skills for the 18 plus, and that includes apprenticeships, traineeships. We look after the Greater Manchester Devolved Adult Education budget for Bury. The Working Well programmes, again, if you don't know what the Working Well programmes, I'm more than happy to send you links. But it's something that I'm really quite passionate about, because these programmes are flagship GM that were designed by all the districts to support people into employment. So we also support on any other GM funded employment and skills stuff. And then internally we've got the Bury Employment Skills and Health Task Group, more commonly known as BEAST, and that's a multi-agency task group that tries to take that agenda forward. You can see the other things that we do, so labour market intelligence, etc., and trying to link the world of health and wellbeing to good employment. One of the big tasks that we do is business engagement. So we developed our own Bury Means Business brand. We've got our own website, we've got our own social media platform, we've got our business e-newsletter, and we've got the Bury Business Leadership Group as well. And over the last 6 months, we've kind of pivoted away from our normal day-to-day work streams and completely focused on anything COVID related. So my team have been responsible for designing and allocating the discretionary grants, and over the last 6 months we've had over 7,000 emails. We've probably spoken to a number of different businesses as well, so we've been really busy. Our business leadership group has met every week since lockdown, whereas normally it would have met every 2 weeks. The business leadership group is 18 businesses from across the borough, all sectors, all sizes, and as well as them as members, our chief exec's a member and our leader's a member. But they are members like everybody else, and sometimes we have to kind of really restate that to them, that it's not their group, it belongs to the business. So in terms of business support and COVID compliance and supporting our regulatory team and our public health teams, that leadership group has been really useful, because they're our check and measure. When we present to them, they tell us when they think that we're way off, or they give us advice, and they're quite passionate about the skills system as well. So yeah, we work with the Growth Hub every day. We've got a dedicated business growth advisor who's very much part of our team. And then going forward in the future, one of the big key pieces of work will be our inward investment strategy. So again, going back to the Greater Manchester, the GMSF, we should at some point have a new business park in Bury that will be bigger than Trafford Park. So again, we need to plan for the future and get our ducks in order for them new jobs coming into the borough, hopefully. If you can move the slide on, please. So what I'm going to spend more time on today is talking to you about our collaboration with our compliance teams. And luckily for us, they do sit on the same floor pre-COVID. So that kind of made it easier for me to just walk down the corridor and ask them questions, and vice versa. But if we go back to early 2019, Nick Redrop, I think you're on the call, Nick, from the GM Regional Centre of Excellence. I've got to look at my notes to make sure I get that right. Nick approached us to see if we wanted to do a bid to BEIS. Not a massive amount, but nevertheless 25k. We can do a lot with 25k, and we put that bid forward to BEIS to do a project on simplifying regulation programme. So our focus on this project was BAME businesses. So we wanted to engage with BAME businesses just to make sure that they understand the wealth of business support that's out there and available to them, and also just to strengthen that relationship that BAME businesses have with our regulatory teams. So we commissioned ADAB, which is the Asian Development Association of Bury, to manage this programme for us. So together we recruited a dedicated BAME business support officer to work alongside our regulatory colleagues. Now that officer does sit within the economic development team at least 3 days a week. Obviously that was pre-COVID. So even though and that's Naz Islam, I'm really sorry Naz couldn't join us today. He's actually on leave, but if you want some connections to Naz, that's absolutely fine. I can introduce you for his take on the project. So with Naz working with the team, we were really able to build up our relationships quite quickly, both with my team and the regulatory teams, and even other teams across the council, including the Growth Hub as well. So it was part of our wider efforts for an integrated business engagement and support system across the borough. So our initial bid was for 12 months, but I found some match funding because I really saw some scope in this programme, and we have extended for a further 12 months as well. So if you can go to the next slide. Okay, so I'm just going to talk to you about some of the pre-COVID activity. So Naz and his role, as I've said, was to support BAME business to access mainstream business support. And that is primarily through the Greater Manchester Growth Hub, but also we signpost to other funded support where they're eligible as well. But we also wanted to support stronger networking. We wanted to empower our BAME business community. We wanted to provide a platform for their collective voice. So that included the creation of a BAME business forum, sort of to mirror our business leadership group. I've got to say that since COVID, that has completely changed. It's now morphed into a WhatsApp group. So it's a lot more active, in your face, immediate. It doesn't need to wait for meetings. It doesn't need agendas. It doesn't need action points. It's much more immediate, and that seems to have worked quite well. In terms of community mentors and community translators, that's a work in progress. We've had to kind of pause on that for a little while, but we'll certainly pick that up going forward. So we also wanted to support our BAME businesses to see our regulatory services team in a completely different way, to see them as a team that helps their business to comply, that wants their business to comply, that wants their business to grow. And the additionality of this project is that while NAS and our regulatory teams are engaging with businesses, we tell them about other stuff. So we tell them about employment support, access to skills, access to ESOL, access to finance. So it's like an holistic offer. We're not just talking to them about one subject. So if you can move to the next one. So expected outcomes. So Naz at the beginning of this said he wanted to have some qualitative data on what works for BAME businesses. So he developed a questionnaire, and we can share the findings of this questionnaire about what worries them, what regulatory support appeals to them, and what works in simplifying regulation and raising compliance levels. So some of the information that came back from that was that some of the letters that we send out to businesses are too complex, the too council speak, even some of the language that we use in our assessment reports. I know that we have to use that language. I know there's some sort of legal element to that, which I'm sure some of the regulatory teams on this call will know more about. But nevertheless, that came back that a lot of people just couldn't understand it. So, and also quantitative data, seeking the opinions of businesses at the beginning and at the end of the project. And some of the improvement metrics that NAS put in place was to see fewer enforcement notices, less intervention required, improved food hygiene ratings with those businesses that we've engaged with. And for some of our BAME businesses, it's that understanding that when you comply, that means your business can grow. That means that customers who come into your restaurant, takeaway business or whatever, or into your taxi or whatever, will have increased confidence in what you offer. And that could lead to business growth, and that could lead to employing more staff, which is good for everybody. So on to the next one. Oh, so right. No, let's go back one. Sorry. Successful outcomes to date. So a reduction in evasion and an increase in trust has been evident as engagement has increased. The regulatory officers have successfully supported and proactively increased compliance. And NAS has met with several businesses before inspections, so even before our officers have landed on the premises, just to talk through the process. And this has saved a lot of officer time and reducing the need for repeat visits and enforcement as well. And we've promoted best practice to all the businesses that we've engaged with as well. So on to the next one, where I'm going to just go quickly through a bit of a case study. Okay, the next one, please. Thank you. So this case study is on a takeaway. We've got lots of other case studies as well, some of them involving the fire service, which is an interesting one, but I just want to talk you through this one today. So I'm not going to use the name, but it is a takeaway that's predominantly dealing with chicken. So when our regulatory team inspected them and gave them the reports, these are some of the the things that were on that report. So you can see in that first section that I've shared with you, no safety management systems in place, no food hygiene with the staff training, food not properly separated, doner meat stored at room temperature, open cans stored in a refrigerator. If you can just press again, if you don't mind, the other items will come up as well. There we go. So floor coverings, dirty in rear preparation area, cellar walls and ceilings constructed of bare plaster, inadequate facilities to wash, microwave not cleaned, etc., etc. And that's not an exhaustive list, but it kind of outlines a significant cause for concern. If you can move to the next slide. The team that undertook this inspection spoke to NAS and said, I really think this business needs your help. So permission from the business was given, and NAS approached the business owner and spent quite some considerable time with him. Because the immediate impact for this business owner was he went to a 0 rating. So Just Eat, Deliveroo and Uber Eats suspended their contract with him. This had a massive impact on his revenue. Daily average was reported at £75, which was not enough to cover the salary costs of his 5 employees. This business owner had to dip into his own savings to cover them costs, and he was, you can imagine, he was quite upset, quite angry with the regulatory team, and just simply could not understand some of the measures that they'd asked to be put in place. So one example was he just couldn't get that. Why did bare plaster have to be painted? But when NAS explained to him was that it was porous and it was a breeding ground to collect bacteria. I think it was a bit of a light bulb moment. He completely understood. So he went through all of the key points and he addressed all of the key points. And on a further inspection was undertaken, resulting in a rating of 5. And I've just inserted that quote there from the business that was provided to NAS. The other thing about this business is it didn't help this business owner. He actually went on and sold the business because he just couldn't recoup everything that he'd lost. So the business is still going, but with a different business owner. Okay, that's next slide, please. So then along came COVID in March. So we decided to switch the support that NAS gave. We pivoted what he did to support with COVID compliance. So what NAS did, which I think is a brilliant idea, he set up a mock-up compliant takeaway setting within a central community centre. So we had the counter, things like posters, where to put posters, sanitizers, etc., etc. And that's appointment only. So businesses contact NAS, they make an appointment, it's all done with safe distancing, and he walks them around that mock setup and explains to them what he needs to do. He delivers one-to-one support with BAME businesses to understand national COVID guidance, and we know that's changing by the day. I don't know if you know, but in Bury, we're in one of the areas of special interest where our pubs shut at 10, etc. And as our rates unfortunately are going up by the day, but not as bad as they were a couple of weeks ago. So that support is really, really important to some of our BAME businesses. He's still providing ongoing work to support taxi drivers, ongoing work to support food hygiene, inspections and allergens, and he's still signposting to mainstream business support as well. So he's still picking up the other stuff, but we're just concentrating on COVID compliance for the moment. So the other way, I just want to quickly, if I've still got time, just to get in what economic development is doing to support our regulatory teams. So we got some money for supporting the reopening of town centres. We've not actually got the money yet, but we're hoping to get it soon. So on our action plan, we wanted to recruit some SME compliance support officers, and Angela, who's the head of our regulatory team, she wanted to join us today, but she's just bombed out. She's bombed out. For her to sit back and write the job description and go through all the recruitment process, she just didn't have time. So my team have took that on for her. So we did the job descriptions, we did all the recruitment process, we got it out on GM Jobs. We had 22 really good applications for a 6-month temporary job. So that kind of tells you a bit about what potentially is coming when furlough ends. So Angela has now found time in her diary. She's recruited. That was done online. Interesting. And we've got some really, really excellent candidates to take that forward. So that's just a little example I wanted to slip in about how teams should support other teams during this time, especially our regulatory teams. So on to the next one, which I think is the last one. And I know you want questions to be at the end, so I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tracy. That was fascinating. Absolutely brilliant to hear about all that work and collaboration in the time of COVID as well. So that's fantastic. We will take questions at the end. I was really particularly interested in to hear about the mock setup that you did for takeaways. I think that maybe that is the way to try and deal with the language barriers that there may be. So that's fantastic to hear about that. But we're sure we'll have more questions at the end. I think if we go across now to speak to Alex Dockery, and if we could have Alex's slide. Alex, are you?
Yeah, I'm here, and perfect. Thanks for having me, everyone. I think Tracy's done a great job of outlining the various functions that we deal with on a day-to-day basis in economic development, so I don't have to do that. She's also highlighted some of the challenges that all local authorities are facing at the moment, dealing with the pandemic and the economic impact that's creating in our town and city centres. So what I'll do is I'll touch upon maybe some perception issues around what businesses think of regulators, with perhaps a York kind of slant on that. And then I'll reflect on the kind of work we've done as partners in York around how we supported businesses through the pandemic and reopened our city centre and secondary shopping centres to make sure that we're very much still open for business and welcome visitors to the city. So can I go on to the next slide, please? So before we did any kind of work through BBFA, in terms of how we kind of thought our perception was amongst the business community in terms of regulation, we really didn't know. So internally, there was perhaps the view that businesses see regulation as a barrier to business growth. I mean, you probably would have seen that in the government's industrial strategy, where they talk about regulation being a burden to businesses. And some of my colleagues thought that they were perhaps viewed as agents of enforcement rather than here to support businesses to comply, which, you know, the latter is really their function. It's definitely how they approach businesses in York. Can I go on to the next slide, please? So what we tried to do about a year ago was try to actually understand what do businesses actually think about regulation and the way that council delivers regulation. So just like Tracy, we bid into BBFA's Simplifying the Delivery of Regulation project. We secured 10K through that fund, and we put together a project that sought to understand the business experience of complying with regulation. We placed emphasis on York's visitor economy businesses, so hospitality, food, tourism businesses and other services that exist in the city centre. The reason we did that was due to the limited availability of funds. So we had a concrete set of funding, and we also defined that to the city centre as well, because we couldn't do a widespread project across York. But what York's visitor economy gave us was a great sample size of businesses that really do access regulation on a day-to-day basis. And also as part of the study, we were also interested in questions around business performance. How were businesses faring? What were their main challenges? When we did the survey, it was just before the first kind of cut-off date for Brexit, the kind of October deadline. So as you can imagine, quite a few businesses were worried about what the future may hold and their fortunes from that. So that came through in the project as well. Can I go on to that slide, please? And this is just a popular street in York called Fossgate. This was taken about 2 years ago as part of the Frostgate Festival. Obviously today it's nothing like that, but it shows you kind of how popular some of the streets are in York and the kind of activity that happens outside of pandemics. Next slide, please. So what we did with the project then is my team, we crafted around kind of 18 questions as part of a survey focused around business performance and also what businesses' views were in terms of complying with regulation and the service they received from the council. What we then did was gave this over to a local research company to come up with a bit of a methodology for how they would not only identify certain businesses to take part in the study, but also come up with a plan for how they'd get in contact with them and to make sure that actually statistically the findings were robust. So what that gave us was a total sample size of 480 businesses. And through that, we took 127 phone interviews. 58% of businesses surveyed were micro businesses, so businesses that had between 1 and 9 employees. And the little table at the bottom shows you the kind of makeup of the businesses that took part in the survey. So quite a good spread between the different sectors that we're looking to target. And actually, the percentages on the right actually mirror the kind of total proportion of businesses within York's kind of sectoral economy with regards to these sectors as well. Next slide, please. So what some of the findings showed us on business support and regulation? Well, 3/4 of businesses had sought information, support or advice in the last 12 months, and regulation was the most common area in which help was sought, and online was the most used source of information. So clearly, businesses in these sectors, regulation was a #1 priority for business support and advice. Next slide, please. And what businesses told us was actually, whilst we previously had some kind of misconceptions that perhaps, like I said before, the regulation was a bit of a burden to businesses and they saw us as agents of enforcement, what the survey actually said that businesses actually wanted us to take formal enforcement actions against those who actually flouted the law or ignored advice. So what they were saying there is that businesses really valued a level playing field. They wanted to make sure that their competitors or other businesses in the city was doing the right things and complying with the law and regulation. And that was quite an important finding. They also said that we were approachable and our advice was valued, which is obviously pleasing to hear. But they also said that being more proactive would improve how businesses perceive us. And again, for my colleagues, that was quite an important finding because internally, that view of regulatory offers as being a kind of burden to businesses, kind of always bothering them and stopping them from actually getting on and running their business. Well, what businesses are telling us is that perception is not true. They want support and they want to know who to approach about it, and actually being open for discussion and being open to actually help businesses through their needs, just as Tracy outlined with her examples. That's what businesses want from us. So they want us to be open and available and share information. Next slide, please. So just going into a bit more detail, some of the kind of findings then. So you can see on the left a bunch of statements which we kind of surveyed businesses with. And on the right, kind of what they thought about that, how much they agreed with it, how much they disagreed with it. So you can see there that the overwhelming majority wanted to see formal enforcement action taken against those who flouted the law or ignored advice. A great percentage of businesses felt that they could approach the council without fear. They knew how to get in touch with us if they wanted advice on how to comply. And just over half of businesses trusted us as well. Only 16% didn't. The other people in between, I'm not sure what their feelings were. But obviously always room to work there to improve that. And then below the line, you can see perhaps a few more kind of negative findings, perhaps kind of hitting to the heart of what I said around maybe encouraging us to be more proactive. So clearly businesses feel that we're not encouraging them to come forward. Perhaps they don't feel that their views are heard and acted upon. And that's reflected in some of the charts there. Next slide, please. And then again, a few more some more statements and some more kind of graphical responses. Clearly, businesses feel that they value the advice we provide and know how to complain if they're not happy with the service or the decision. They believe that we treat them fairly and consistently, that we provide advice in a timely manner, and it's quite easy to access our services, which is all positive stuff. And then the last thing at the bottom, businesses did feel that perhaps the way that the council provides our advice across across the organisation is perhaps not as joined up as could be, and that's quite an important point. I'm sure many of you on the line will kind of reflect upon that one, and that this is really the whole point of BBFA, is to simplify the delivery of regulation to make sure that we're more joined up with our economic development teams, as Tracy said, between planning and economic development. So actually, as an organisation, we're quite seamless in how we communicate with business. And that's definitely how we've been trying to position City of York Council, both before the pandemic and also during the pandemic as well. So next slide, please. So just to recap on kind of what businesses want from us then. So they wanted us to be more proactive, they wanted clearer points of contact, and they also wanted a notification service as well as a range of options to receive advice. So we very much took that on board, and that was part of how we improve the service moving forwards. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to do now then is perhaps move into what we've done to help businesses through the pandemic, and hopefully show how we've put some of those findings from the survey into practice, as well as how we've worked in partnership with other organisations across the city to support businesses in a time of need, really emphasising the benefits of collaboration, the point that Teresa made right at the beginning of the session. And that's a shot of Museum Street in York and the York Minster, one of the most famous landmarks in the city. Next slide, please. So in terms of views from the ground then, from a regulation point of view, well, clearly we're seeing both confusing and fast-changing guidance issued by central government, especially before businesses in certain sectors were allowed to reopen. We also saw a need to increase consumer confidence. Clearly, consumers were worried about the pandemic catching it and whether places and businesses will be safe after reopening. And what we've also seen, quite importantly for us in economic growth, and also those who work in the LEPs as well, and I also work for York and North Yorkshire LEP in a kind of secondary role, we've seen businesses looking to the public sector for support and place leadership. And that's really important, and that has really changed how we've been able to engage with businesses, both during the pandemic and also moving forwards now as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of regulatory support, so what we've done here is we've placed a real emphasis on getting businesses up and running and ensuring public safety. So this has resulted in interpreting guidance very quickly. The government guidance was issued, in many cases, at very late notice, a wealth of pages. We had to work really quickly to actually digest that, but also turn that back to businesses in a easily understandable format. Just like Tracy highlighted, there are a number of business owners in York who where English isn't their first language, and therefore what they really needed was kind of plain English, kind of short documents, so they can understand what the law changes were and how they needed to comply with the guidance in terms of being COVID secure. We've also had to engage with businesses in very different ways, and often having to use our local knowledge. Clearly, during the pandemic, face-to-face was often not an option, so we had to provide a lot of guidance over email or through telephone calls, or through technology even. And then obviously, I don't know how many of you know York, but York's a historic city, and therefore some of our streets and some of our buildings are quite small, quite tight. They're very different to modern day standards, and therefore having that knowledge of how a premises looks, how big it is, helps us to provide that guidance, because especially with some of the hospitality and retail businesses, the guidance in terms of being COVID compliant had to change due to the nature of their premises and what they can accommodate regarding social distancing, and therefore we did have to vary the guidance accordingly. Next slide, please. So what we also did to support businesses to reopen, we launched a series of business recovery toolkits, both for licensed premises, but also those who obviously didn't require licenses. And that include posters, that include floor stickers, that also included guidance in a form of a pack as well, so businesses had the right information to get themselves ready to open. We also installed visible signage across the city. We extended foot streets, and we utilised outdoor space to aid social distancing and boost trade, very much making sure that the city was open for businesses, and businesses were able to use their outdoor space to extend their trading as well. Again, picking up on my point where I talked about some of the premises being quite small, that obviously limited their availability and capacity for trade. By using outdoor space, they're able to expand their cover space and obviously take on more customers and do more trade, and hopefully benefiting from the nicer weather that we saw over summer. Next slide, please. So these are some examples of how some of the kind of foot streets were changed. Obviously, you can see on the right, use of outdoor kind of cafe space. On the left, we worked with York Bid to create a pop-up outdoor space on College Green, which had a teepee and benches, allowing families and residents to come together in a kind of COVID secure way. Next slide, please. So in terms of wider support, and this is something that more that me and my team have done since the pandemic. So we distributed over 100 million in grants and rates relief to over 4,000 businesses in York. In terms of the government's original grants, we are one of the quickest local authorities in the country to get that out. We also implemented our own council grant scheme as well for businesses that fell outside of the government's initial criteria. So those that were in shared working premises, those that operated their businesses from home, those B&Bs that paid council tax, they initially were outside of the government scope for funding. So we actually provided, £1,000 grants to businesses who were in those kind of settings. That was then supplemented by the government's discretionary grant fund, which we also delivered, which we then topped up, obviously, having already given some of those businesses grants beforehand. So that grant pot was in total £1 million of the council's own money that we went out there, pushed out to businesses. We also provided 500 free memberships of the FSB for small and micro businesses, again, to enable businesses in this time of need to access a wide range of support that's available through the FSB. And I know the FSB will be speaking on Friday, I think it is, to talk about how they've worked with businesses through the pandemic and what's on offer through them as well. We also launched 12 sector roundtables, enabling businesses to share their experiences and also help our recovery response as well. So through that process, over 250 businesses have engaged with the council. We've run 2 iterations of those sector roundtables, and we're now undergoing a 3rd iteration to get that feedback from businesses and understand how and where we need to lobby government for extra support, and also how the council can help them to recover and hopefully, reach a stable footing moving forwards. We've also launched a weekly e-bulletin to provide accurate updates to well over 1,000 businesses each week. So that's information on government guidance, the business support that's available through council partners such as the LEP, the DMOs, other support organisations that operate nationally, sub-regionally, and making sure that businesses are up to date with what's happening in the city. And then finally, we've also launched a tourism recovery marketing plan for the city as well. That's important because York's well known for its heritage and tourism offer. In the city centre, we have plenty of hospitality, retail and tourism businesses. It's important that we do our bit to try and encourage residents and visitors back into the city centre, as well as making sure that we do that in a COVID secure way. So next slide, please. So this is my final slide. So, I think this is pretty kind of self-explanatory. Partnership working has been key through the pandemic, and we've had to pull on all our kind of relationships across several agendas to make sure that we do what we can to support businesses in this difficult time. Quite early on during the pandemic, we launched a business intelligence group that met at least weekly, which is made up of representatives from the council, from Make It York, our DMO, the York Chamber of Commerce, the FSB, our universities, and York Business Improvement District, to make sure that we were sharing business intelligence, that we were working collaboratively on shared agendas, and that we really hit some of the important areas that we need to target to make sure that York's economic recovery was well underway, and that we were supporting businesses in the right way. Clearly, effective business engagement and the right communication channels are critical. I think how we've worked together in partnership throughout the pandemic has been a real positive for York. It's been remarked upon by both our partners, but also our business community. It's very much a model that we're looking to take forward. And we've also had to streamline our decision-making process due to the need to be agile and make decisions quickly. And we've very much done that, and we've learned from that. And then finally, I guess one of the most important points that I wanted to get across, and hopefully I've shown that through my presentation. Businesses really do value the support that's been provided by regulators, and this has really been reinforced by COVID-19. So you guys are all doing a great job in helping businesses to understand government guidance, to comply, and to make sure that they're COVID secure. And businesses really do appreciate that. That's been reflected in all the kind of comments that we've received locally in York, and where my regulatory colleagues have perhaps expected some pushback from businesses who weren't able to open because that's what government guidance said, or they weren't able to operate in a secure way. Actually, businesses were very, very understanding. They saw that my colleagues were trying to do everything they could to make sure that both their staff and customers were being kept safe, and they were fine with that with that decision. So I wouldn't be afraid to have those difficult conversations because businesses do appreciate it. So I think my next slide is just another shot of York, hopefully. So thank you. Happy to take any questions.
It's a lovely shot of York. Excellent, thank you. So I'm just going to move across because we have got, just looking at the time, we have got some questions on the chat. So I just want to see if a couple of people have put the questions up are still available. Is it Michaela Monk or is it Mickey? I think you put a question. Are you available?
Yes, I am. I suppose coming from the regulator side, and when you hear that traders find understanding our advice and blah, all this imposition on them difficult to understand, there's only so much we can dumb it down, and unless it's a food business, we don't get to know about these businesses opening, and it would be so much easier for all of us if we learned about them before they started and before they opened. And I was wondering whether the economic development team passes on information about new businesses to their regulators.
Do you want me to take that one first?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, we do. I mean, there's various ways that we know about new businesses opening. I mean, if it's there's obviously specific examples of licensed premises where they need to get a license, and therefore that will come directly into our licensing / trading standards colleagues. So obviously, the notification there. We also regularly monitor the planning list that comes through into my team every week, so we know who's investing in York, what changes they're looking to make to premises, so we can pass that information on, and also get to know the business and perhaps give them a welcome if they're new to the city. So there are ways of obviously obtaining that information, and the key is how you share that information internally. Within the council, we've got an internal network called Business Friendly Council, and that group is made up of various service areas that interface with businesses on a regular basis. So we all come together monthly to share and update each other on what we're up to, what things we're working on, and perhaps get input from other service areas in terms of some of our initiatives. And we can also raise some tricky topics there as well for wider input. So the approach at York City Council is basically one of being open and being collaborative. Obviously, in the public sector, it's you can work in silos. We are trying really hard to break the silos down because they don't benefit the businesses, and they definitely don't benefit my day job. So where we can, we are trying to break down those barriers. And I guess that has to come both top down and also bottom up as well.
Thank you very much. Is there anything that Tracy, do you want to add?
We pretty much do the same thing, to be honest. So we've got our investing single point of contact approach at Bury. So any inward investors, they come to one place, and we act as the facilitators to make sure that if they are investing in our town at whatever scale, that's a smooth operation for them. So we assist them in terms of finding land, of understanding what teams are available to support them, access to finance, recruitment, etc. So pretty much the same as what Alex is describing. And again, we have an internal business engagement team. So anybody who has a touch with businesses, we keep them updated with what's going on, what's on the horizon, etc. So yeah, and I get what you mean about dumbing down the language, and I don't think we should dumb it down. I think it is what it is. But what Naz does in our team, he talks to the regulatory team and he agrees with them what is appropriate in what he translates. So he's not qualified, so he doesn't just go off to businesses and say what these guys actually mean is this. It's much more coordinated to, he explains the rationale behind some of the decisions.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Yeah,
Thanks.
I hope that's answered your question. I'm just going to go quickly. I've got another gentleman, Anthony. Is it Lobo? It's got a question. Are you still available?
Hi, yep, I'm here as well. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, brilliantly, loud and clear.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I think this was, I guess I'm quite new to the whole process of the BBFA, and so it's really interesting just to find out more about it. So I actually come from more of a public health background, and I was just wondering if there is any scope within BBFA to incorporate wider council initiatives that maybe aren't necessarily directly linked to regulation. So, for example, when Tracy was mentioning the takeaway example, that's a very good, I guess, a situation where there would be the opportunity to be working closely with a business owner, and you could bring in a lot around the health agenda. And for example, where I'm working at the moment, there's a lot around the healthy catering that's going on at the moment. And already having that conversation and working closely would allow that conversation to come in. And I guess it's not a direct regulatory element, but is an important public health initiative, especially around with COVID and weights kind of elements in place as well. So I just wondering if anyone had any thoughts on that.
Can I get that one first?
Yes, of course. I think so. Lovely.
Absolutely, and we definitely do that. So within my team, we've got health and employment officer, and she's actually funded by public health, so her role is exactly that. So whatever work we do with businesses, if we can connect that to the health agenda, that's what we do. So absolutely, definitely.
And that's similar for me as well. The other thing I would add is that we've got quite a big focus in York on public realm and placemaking, and public health has to be at the heart of that as well. So healthy placemaking, how we design our places, that is fundamental to creating the right kind of environments that you want in your city and town centres, and that needs to be top of the agenda when it comes to how we think about urban planning and the future of our towns and cities as well.
Great.
I think that's a definite yes, Anthony.
Yeah, thanks.
That's okay. We have one more question. So we're due to finish at 14:50, so 2:50. So if we just take one more question, I can see we've got a question from my colleague Neil. Neil, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. I hope you can see me and hear me. Thanks, Alex and Tracy, for your session so far. Quite a short question. How do you identify relative importance of sectors in the area of the City of York? Or
yeah, I can answer that. Yeah, I mean, obviously, what I will say first of all is that all sectors and businesses are important. We've got quite a diverse economy in York. If we wanted to do a quick and kind of an easy kind of diagnostic on kind of the economic importance, we can look at job figures, so how many people employed within the sector. We can also look at, into the GVA, the output, how much output does a sector generate. They're all important metrics. I think what I didn't say with my presentation is we put quite a big focus on the business economy in York. Retail, hospitality, tourism. They employ in total probably about a third of all employment in York, so they're big employers, and obviously big for the city in terms of economic output as well. The reason why we try to focus on that group as well is because in the traditional kind of business support forums and also the business support programs that are provided for the LEPs, they're very much ignored because they're classed as kind of B2C businesses, so business to the consumer. A lot of the growth programs at the moment only deal with B2B businesses, so businesses that trade, with other businesses, and therefore those sectors have to date been very much outside of traditional business support programs that have come from government. Clearly, as I've indicated in kind of what I just said, that they're big employers in York. What we've seen in the current COVID situation is actually those sectors have probably been the most disproportionately affected by COVID as well. So actually what we've called for through government and also through the LEPs is more business support for those sectors. And the government have obliged through their Kickstart scheme, which many LEPs have started to deliver. And hopefully we'll be seeing more support for visitor economy businesses in further government announcement as well, because the visitor economy is massive for the UK and it's big for York as well, both domestic and overseas.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you, Tracy. I'm just looking at the time, so we're kind of 1 minute over. Can I just ask anybody else who's on the line if they'd like to ask another question? Right. Okay, I will take that silence as a no, thank you. Okay, but I'd like to thank the speakers. That was absolutely brilliant. It was really good to hear about the ways that you're collaborating with your regulatory team. And I think that obviously the work you've done before COVID, then obviously that has supported the development of other projects going forward. It's brilliant to hear about how much regulators and businesses value the work of your team's economic development and also regulatory advice. And that's come out very clear from Alex's information, but also from the support and even through the food hygiene scores, improvements in food premises, food hygiene scores in Bury. So that's fantastic to hear. So I think they've been great successes, and keep collaborating is my advice. Thank you very much. And to everybody who's signed in, thank you very much. And please get in touch if you'd like to know any more details from the speakers, then I'm sure we can pass on their details. So I'd like to say thank you very much and look forward to seeing you later on the week as the events continue during the week. Thank you. And
thanks, guys.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank
Bye.
you. Excellent presentations.